Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, presented by Cattle, Season 5, Episode 14. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm the Food Professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Our very special guest recorded live together at the Coffee Association of Canada's conference is Ed Hoehn, COO for Atomo Beanless Coffee, a very innovative approach to brewing a cup of joe that is just great tasting and, as they say, the most sustainable coffee on the planet.
The conversation with Ed was amazing. It was great. And what a really intriguing product. And he had the guts to go on stage in front of coffee connoisseurs and tell the industry, you know what? The way you think, the way things are done, the way we produce coffee is going to change forever. Gutsy approach, don't you think?
I thought so. And he brought us some coffee. So we tried that live as we were doing the interview.
We did.
And we did, and it's a fascinating story, so we'll get to that a little bit later on in the show. All right, well, let's get into the news. Now, I'm not entirely sure how much time we should spend or dedicate to President-elect Trump's threat to put a 25% tariff on Canada, although for podcasters like us, he's the gift that keeps on giving content-wise. So, you know, if we dedicated time on the podcast to reacting to outrageous things that the Donald puts on social media for the next 4 years, we might as well start another podcast. My thoughts on this, whether this is actually going to happen or not, can be summed up with this fantastic scene in a wildly underrated movie, War Dogs. Let's listen in.
Hey, seriously, is this safe driving to Baghdad?
Yes, very safe. 50-50.
50-50, what, like 50% we live, 50% we die?
Yes. That's why we drive through night. It's much safer.
How much safer?
50-50.
50-50. Is it going to happen? Is it all bullshit? 50-50. I don't know.
Who cares? Who cares?
Now, you said last episode the Americans would never put a tariff on food, as that would drive the average American consumer price up. As your thinking's changed, what are you at right now? We've kind of, I know the one thing's changed. The Canadian dollar went down on the news, but what's going on in your head about this stuff?
Markets are agreeing with me. It's all about rhetoric. It's about style. It's not about policy. I think it's like the nuclear war, right? You need nuclear weapons, but you're not going to use them. Hopefully, anyways. That's what's going on with Trump. We've been through this rodeo before. Like, why are people panicking? I think people are panicking because we are not sure exactly what Ottawa is going to do. In Mexico, I don't know if you've been watching the news in Mexico, but in Mexico, they're pretty clear in terms of what they want to do. They actually could retaliate. And, of course, we all know that the president there is more on the left side of the political continuum. So it's pretty clear what they want to do. In Ottawa, I just feel that this government is just shaking, not knowing what to do. It's consulting with premiers. It's wondering what next steps are to be taken and things like that. I mean, I think that's probably why people are incredibly nervous. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't think it will ever happen because it's all about style. It's about pushing countries to give America what it wants.
And apparently America wants a safer border with Canada. Was that on your bingo card? Was that on your bingo card?
Well, I think I was in Texas just last week, and I know that the border is a big problem there. They just think it's
in Mexico.
They don't know much about the border up north. They just assume it's the same problem, but it's not. Of course, it's not the same.
Of course,
it's not the same problem in Canada. So again, it's going to be about education. There's going to be a bunch of meetings, and again, I do think that you need to take this threat very seriously. You need to take action. You need to reassure the American public and the president-elect as well. And I suspect that things are just going to disappear. That's my expectation. But I do think, even though I don't think it's going to happen, you absolutely need to take this threat very seriously. But the one thing that made me really laugh this week is a quote coming from your premier, Doug Ford. Basically, last week he said, you know what? I think we need to kick Mexico out of our trade deal. And then yesterday he said, how dare you, America, threatening Canada with tariffs. It's insulting.
A knife into us. It's insulting. Well, listen. I think people are taking this more seriously because the sense is, and we won't know this until next year, is that there's fewer guardrails than there were in his first run at this. He owns all three houses. He's got people in there who are ardent tariff proponents, and he has few people who are less tariff.
And he only has 4 years. So we all know that he only has 4 years to act on anything. So he has to make things happen in the first year.
Yeah. By the way, let's check back in 3.5 years because we can find the Supreme Court judging that they're going to make an exception, by the way. So don't think he's got 4 years. In fact, I think the GOP has 8 to 10 years. So let's set our milestone horizon a little farther than 4 years. Absolutely.
Oh my God.
He's already joked
this
about it.
This is not a political podcast, but you're going on a limb here.
No, that's not a limb. I would put good money on that coming up real soon. And he's got the Supreme Court on his side. And he's got all parts of government on his side. Why would you kick out a winner?
So you think he's going to pull a President Xi, extending a possible mandate of a ruler?
Come on, he loves Putin and Xi. He loves the way they rule. His biggest concern is he doesn't have enough time. He's going to set forward to fix that.
Oh my God.
Anyway, let's leave that one there because boy, we could talk about it forever.
King Donald Trump.
Well, listen, at the end of the day, whatever happens, we'll be here to report on it and talk about the impacts on the ag sector. Obviously, 25% tariff on the ag sector.
Listen, if we have to talk about Donald Trump for 8 years, I'm gonna shoot myself. I don't know, geez.
Well, let's move on. But Trump related, I've been asking you about whether in his upcoming cabinet, I guess we could say, I'm using a Canadian term, who's going to be looking after ag. So we learned this week he named Brooke.
Let's go back a little bit about this tariff thing because I think it's a really significant issue for ag in particular. But
it's not going to happen. So why would we talk about it?
Well, here's the thing: companies have to plan. And uncertainty is really not good when you're planning. So right now we're in November going into December. There's lots of uncertainty. What's going to happen? You got to hedge. You got to look at other markets.
You got a scenario plan, right?
Exactly.
You got a scenario plan. What happens if it's 10? What happens if it's
labor
0?
Disruption? Exactly. So we saw that with labor disruption.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so basically you have $60 billion worth of food products going into the United States. 60 billion, sorry. 40 billion going out to the United States, 30 billion coming in from the United States. You slap a 25% tariff on that, you're going to kill the industry. Do you remember after the Second World War, the Americans were selling a ton of chicken to Germany? Do you remember that?
Not firsthand, but I know the story. Yes.
So for a few years, America was selling a lot of chicken to German, and German chicken farmers were upset. And so Germany decided to implement a tariff on American chicken, 25% overnight. No chicken from America came in. So American farmers were quite upset, went to Washington, said, what are you going to do about it? They implemented a chicken tax on, guess what? On German trucks. So to this day, today, if you're a German manufacturer and you want to sell a truck to America, because trucks are used by farmers, so they implement a chicken tax. And that chicken tax is still valid today. There you go. A bit of history. But 25%
That's a great story.
Is huge.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Of course it is. I mean, we'll be in a recession.
Of course, on top of that, because we're looking at the Canada's food price report, but if you actually implement a 25% tariff on products going to the United States, well, a lot of products we import from the United States has a little bit of Canada in it. So those ingredients are going to become more expensive. So that could actually impact our inflation as well. And of course, we have to talk about our dollar.
A school of thought that says we would turn to other markets to move that food, but I don't think we can move that much food to other markets beyond America. Do you? Like that's a lot of
no. It's the cheapest. It's the cheapest source. I mean, it's so convenient. But it's the other question mark we have is what's going to happen to the dollar? You know,
down 1% this week, right?
Yeah.
So
that
it feels
that
like the
is
markets
really,
are not confident. It feels like that's a counter story to yours, that the markets are worried that Canada's in a bit of trouble.
I think the lack of confidence is baked into to the value of the dollar, but I don't think we fully measured the level of non-confidence, if you will, in regards to the Canadian economy. Because in America, things are going very well. I mean, the stock market is just booming. So the stock market is basically telling us there aren't going to be any tariffs, but it's all that movement around the currency and trades that is going to be a bit problematic for all companies buying and selling around the world. So it's really, but Trump loves it. This is just
this is the chaos. He's a chaos agent. He loves this stuff. It's fantastic. We love it too because it gives us so much to talk about. He's the gift that keeps on giving. I'll tell you. Listen, he's the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, now Doug Ford's going to be running commercials. He actually filmed them. Just reading a report, Ontario Premier filmed a bunch of commercials pre-Easter. You know, they all knew what was coming. We all know what was coming. Like, I don't know why anybody's shocked about this kind of chaos, but, you know, the Ford government went out and filmed a bunch of commercials about how important the relationship between our two great lands is, and they're going to start coincidentally running next week. Lots of stuff happening. But listen, suddenly the prime minister is actually talking and getting the premiers together. What does it take to get the premiers together, to get the prime minister to rule this great land and actually bring premiers together in a room? Certainly not forest fires or climate events. No. It's anyway. As I've said,
I would say, I mean, the premiers. I mean, I hope they're talking about this today. I do think that last week's movement from premiers was a mistake. When you go to America, Canada doesn't matter a whole lot. If you think that Canada is super important to Americans, yes, premiers may have had a point in saying let's exclude Mexico from the next pack. But the reality is that Mexico gets more attention than Canada. If you listen to CNBC, to some of the financial shows in the United States, CNN, they talk mostly about Mexico. So what happens? You know what I'd like Mexico, to do?
You know, let's get an economist on to talk about why we care about Mexico, because I'm not clear on why being in a trade agreement with Mexico. You talked about it last episode, but I'm not quite clear on why it matters. We buy so little from them, and it really, you know, it's the concern, as you know, is China just opens factories in Mexico and imports stuff into Canada that are actually cheap Chinese product with low labor costs. So I'd love to learn more, really, because I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced we're wrong. Anyway, we're going to see.
Well, we're so you have to adopt, if you only adopt a Canadian perspective on trades, you'll say, yeah, absolutely. Why do we need Mexico? But you have to adopt the big kahuna's perspective, and that's the American. And I do think that there's a lot to be said about labor movement, about the cost of production as well. There's lots of products we import from the United States. Parts are actually coming from Mexico as well. It just makes the market more efficient with a North American partner like Mexico, to be honest, and they're more populous.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Listen, man.
And we actually have access to ungraded Mexican beef. How's that?
Well, there you go. There you go. You found a win for Canadian consumers. We can get crap Mexican beef tough, on the shelves.
But hey, it's Mexican ungraded beef. Yummy.
Stale and it's tough, just like our dollar. Let's turn our minds now to the brand new ag department lead in the United States, Brooke Rollins, described by the New York Times, conservative lawyer, leading the agriculture department. Let's see, in their statement, Brooke's commitment to support the American farmer, defense of American food self-sufficiency, and the restoration of agriculture-dependent American small towns is second to none, Trump wrote on social media. Now, Ms. Rollins hails from Glen Rose, Texas, and studied agriculture development where? Texas A&M, where you just came from, the powerhouse of agriculture, and
grew up on a farm.
Basically, it all about her career. It all started in agriculture. She now leads a department with a $200 billion budget, 1,000 employees, at least until the Dodge guys get a hold of it. Sylvain, what do they do?
Yes.
What do they do with all that money and those people? I think they own food stamps that's funded out of that. But what's any early sense of whether this is good, neutral, or Breaking Bad for Canadian ag?
Well, I would say, when I look at some of these appointments, I'm just trying to figure out whether or not Canada is going to win. And my guess is that Ms. Rollins doesn't know much about Canada. There's just no connection with Canada at all. So we're not going to be a priority for the USDA, unfortunately. So there's some education that needs to be done here with the appointment. But other than that, the USDA is a really powerful agency within the U.S. government, unlike Ag Canada. Well, the CFIA's budget, which is part of Ag, employs 8,000 people and has a budget of about $800 million. So,
okay. Yeah. So call that,
but that's part
$1 billion?
of Ag and Health. And so, but Ag is really just insignificant in Canada. But when you talk about the USDA, man, in the US, oh my God, they have data, they have influence. Every week they actually publish reports. People read them. They actually read them. They actually read reports coming from the government.
So
And,
wait. Are you saying they actually have a ag strategy in America? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly. And Ms. Rollins will be made accountable towards that strategy, of course. Yeah.
Well,
absolutely.
maybe if we're lucky, we can get her on the show and we can introduce her to a bit of Canadian ag and learn more about how she thinks about cross-border trade. So there we go.
Well, I did talk about our podcast when I was in Texas last week.
Sure.
I hope that we've actually grown our
Shout out to the
US
Texans.
audience. And so maybe we did.
Howdy.
And if we did, perhaps I'll mention that to Miss Rollins.
There you go. All right. Let's take a break now and hear about our fantastic sponsor, Cattle. Of course, we'll hear from them first, and then we'll get to an interview with Ed from Atomo. And then we'll come back and talk about, the Vibecession, your latest peer-reviewed study on the impact of climate, and some other stuff about Texas, actually. So let's listen into our good friends at Cattle and then our great interview with Ed. Does your digital customer engagement strategy need a serious upgrade? Enter Cattle, Canada's consumer insights powerhouse with the largest, most active panel of everyday shoppers. They're not your typical sponsor. They're the voice of the consumer, always in the know on the hottest trends and shaping what's next. So why Cattle? They go beyond consumer insights. They're trailblazing the future of ratings and reviews and leading the charge in user-generated content with unmatched syndicated receipt data and the ability to gather reviews across any category. Cattle partners with giants like Walmart, Canadian Tire to deliver results that count. Visit askcattle.com now for an exclusive The Food Professor podcast listener discount on your first review or research campaign today. That's askcattle.com.
So we have our special guest today, thinking of innovation and live at the coffee conference. We have Ed Hoehn, COO of Atomo Coffee, joining us today. Welcome, Ed.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here with you guys, and excited about the conference and having this chat.
And so you just had a panel, discussion panel about innovation and the future of the industry along with Starbucks and Kicking Horse. How did that feel? How did that go?
I thought it went really well. First of all, we love the opportunity to be swimming in those oceans as far as conversations go.
That's a bit of a juxtaposition, right?
Exactly.
That's provocative. Put you in the you put you right. I won't say in the soup. Put you right in the coffee.
Yeah, exactly. So
what kind of coffee? Well,
we're about to find out.
That's right.
Hopefully. No, it was a good conversation. I think, started to get around the fringe of some of the more provocative areas of the conversation. Can Atomo be called coffee?
Yeah, it came up. Came up.
What does sustainability mean to big coffee versus an innovator like Atomo?
So let's take a step back and ask you, what is Atomo Coffee? What is it all about?
Yeah. Atomo Coffee was founded 5 years ago with a mission to create the most sustainable coffee on the planet and help coffee companies solve some of their biggest challenges, which are around supply chain and sustainability. And so we designed coffee with the same 28 compounds that you would find in a traditional cup of coffee from a coffee bean by utilizing other cultivated, more widely available, drought-resistant, natural ingredients.
So when you say compounds, what do you mean? That's not like artificial ingredients. You're talking about breaking down the flavor and aroma with other. What's a compound?
Yeah, so a compound, if you look at what comes out of a roasted coffee bean when it's extracted, say an espresso or filter drip, that sends liquid into your cup, smells a certain way, it's got a certain color, it's got a certain taste.
Yep.
We use scientific equipment to analyze traditional coffee. So when I say compound, what I'm talking about is the molecules that give the signatures of coffee. And we found all those same molecules from more sustainable ingredients that don't face the same supply challenges that coffee do.
That's so you really work the supply chain and optimize it for you, for your company, for your product.
We optimize supply chain by not harvesting ingredients that are going to be in serious trouble over the next 30 years, right? So
give us one or two. I want to get in this fascinating stuff. And then I want to try this coffee before it gets cold, because we've got coffee in front of us that
drink
is...
it while it's hot.
Is it coffee?
Yeah.
Well, let's first determine if it's good. So give me one or two, because I saw on your website there's a bunch of different compounds, as you call them, but ingredients. Give me a couple.
Yeah, all whole natural ingredients. We're not using concentrates or anything like that. So we use date seeds as one example.
Oh, okay.
Date seeds.
We rescue 4 million pounds of date seeds on an annual basis from farmers who were throwing it away. It was going into landfill. We built a facility to clean them, dry them, and granulate them.
So they're making fig Newtons or something, and they're getting rid of the seeds.
Yep.
Oh, interesting.
Kind bars or whatever else. So that's an example. We use strawberries, strawberry fiber, guava, lemon.
Do you appreciate being called the beanless coffee? Is that something that you want?
It was very intentional to be called beanless coffee.
Okay.
There's some budding competitors that are trying to say coffeeless coffee or not coffee and all of that. But we felt really good about beanless as the path.
So, Michael, do you want to taste beanless coffee?
It. So now we've both got the 100%, because sometimes you serve it up mixed with coffee beans themselves, but this is 100% your
100%
formulation.
100% Coachella latte espresso
Cheers, my
blend.
friend.
Cheers. It's good. It's rich.
Yeah.
It's different. But I mean,
it's a little different.
I get a bit of an after note.
Yeah. There's some bitterness.
You do have oat milk in there, just as a reminder.
Oh, there is.
Oh, I've got the oat milk.
Why.
You do not.
No, you both have oat milk.
I like oat milk.
Yeah.
That's the aftertaste.
Yeah.
I was trying to put that's right, because I like oat milk, but I've switched to almond, whatever.
Yeah.
But that's right. But
what about the caffeine kick? So what do we get with Atomo coffee? Do we get the same kick?
Same kick. Yeah. We're quite precise about caffeine utilization.
This is really good.
We add it from green tea.
It is actually very good. Yeah.
Yeah. We use green tea based caffeine.
Where are you based?
So we're
green tea. Okay, so it's beanless coffee with tea. I guess.
Come on,
it's not.
This is crazy. This is. Is this allowed? This is delicious.
We took just the caffeine from green tea, no other. So there's no flavor from it. It's just the added benefit that we add in there.
That's great.
Where are you based?
So the company is headquartered in Seattle. That's where we have about a 35,000 square foot roastery that we finished building in April. Labor of love for me and the rest of the team putting that together.
What's going on in Seattle with coffee?
It's just, like
There's somebody else in Seattle.
I don't remember.
Our friends at Starbucks. Of course, founded in Seattle.
We're a mile down the road from their headquarters, quite intentionally.
A mile, literally.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Now, there's a little bit of, I guess there's also practically or pragmatically a cluster of expertise around that beverage in that city, right? There'd be that would be a big rationale.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a top 5 city in the U.S. per capita coffee shops. There's quite a bit of roasteries.
People know their coffee there.
There's a culture there for coffee for sure.
It's good.
And even like Victoria and Vancouver up north from you, The coffee culture is pretty strong, too.
Yeah, amazingly strong up there. And our team loves to spend lots of time there tasting coffee because it is such a special culture there. And then also going south down into Oregon, there's some great roasters there.
So in terms of products, how many lines of how many types of coffee are you roasting? Can we say roasting in your field?
You
did call it a roastery. You did say roasting.
It's called a roastery, and we actually roast our material in a coffee roaster.
Yeah, how many kinds of coffee do you have right now?
So I would think about it a little bit differently. We have one base set of coffee that we create. That's the beanless portion. And because of how we design our coffee, we have two components that we bring together at the end. And those two components are blended at different ratios depending on the format or the flavor profile we're going for. So today we have two core kind of more consumer-oriented products. Mm-hmm. We have our Coachella Latte Blend, which is the espresso you just enjoyed. And that is designed for coffee shops, for food service, to serve using a professional espresso machine.
Obviously, it would be ground.
It's ground.
It's already pre-ground. Right?
Everything that we deliver today is ground. We will deliver, formats for instant, pod, even create a beanless bean at some point in the future. The second product that we have, we're calling 50/50. And this is our major focus and outreach to the coffee industry. We're not here to replace coffee. Coffee is going to face major supply challenges over the next 30 years.
It is. And cost of coffee this year is just skyrocketing.
That's gone up, yeah.
2 straight years, more than 50% jump.
The 5-year average is its highest ever.
Now, we've talked about this in the pod before, but for the listeners maybe new, just tuning in, that's a lot of environmental pressure on the coffee, and there's fungus, and there's a couple of things going on at the same time, right? What do you think?
It's the perfect storm, right?
Yeah.
You have,
is it temporary, though? Like, I've seen it kind of up and down, or this is a trend going the wrong way?
Well, I think we got to look at citrus and we have to look at cocoa. Those are two that are a little ahead of us on the impact of climate change. And if you look at those, the pricing there is off the charts for both of those.
That's right.
Cocoa is crushing the chocolate industry right now.
Oh, my goodness, yes. $7,000 U.S. Metric ton right now.
I can't believe how little the chocolate was on Halloween. Like, I stole some chocolate, and you get a Kit Kat bar that's the size of a golf pencil here.
Yeah, exactly.
Stolen chocolate is cheaper. So.
There's an economics to it. Hey, kid, look over there. So you think those are kind of canaries in the coal mine? Not to mix metaphors, but look to those things, and you see that same future for coffee.
The one thing about climate change is that I see this as a problem for consumers from a price volatility perspective, and consumers don't like food inflation, but they certainly hate volatility. Your model, without putting you on a spot in terms of price points and things like that, do you expect what you're offering to be less volatile over time?
I would say far less volatile. Like, we're not using an ingredient. We're not relying on one ingredient. We have different formulations to address.
Like a portfolio strategy.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
We've got the ability to insulate ourselves over time. And historically, for the last 5 years, all we've done is reduce costs substantially year over year as we gain. We're not even producing at any level of scale, and we're already very
your costs are
comparable.
Predictable and controllable.
And we see that as a huge benefit for that second product, right? 50/50, where we want to blend our coffee with traditional coffee manufacturers and give them a chance to bring it to the world as a line extension and the most sustainable SKU in their portfolio.
So you would have a consumer strategy and a B2B business-to-business strategy. So do you have listings in grocery stores? Do you have ambition for that?
We have ambition, but we are a startup. And for those that don't know, selling at grocery seems as easy as going and getting
How hard can it be?
Piece of cake.
I got a great product. I'm sure the customers would love it. Let's give it a try together.
But my background, first 15 years of my career was about retail execution for CPG and technology companies, and the last 3 feet is the hardest part of.
I would tell you though, we had the president CEO of Loblaw on a couple episodes, Parabank, and we asked him this question because we think about it often, right? Grocers want innovation, but they're big and they're bureaucratic and there's all kinds of things. and they've set up a fast-moving subgroup for people like you. They pay in 7 days.
Yep.
And that's what they do. They're there to list innovation because they recognize
to bring new products in.
They gotta be moving faster. Have you heard or seen anything like that in your experience in the US?
Yeah.
What about Amazon Fresh? I was just in the Amazon Fresh store in Hoboken.
Yeah.
Oh my,
it's amazing. Now we are seeing that. I won't name names, but we've had conversations, especially on the private label side, right? I'll give an example. This data is available. Whole Foods has $100 million private label coffee business in the U.S. A SKU extension for them that meets their target audience. Right where they're shopping.
That's got to be a good audience.
That
for
would be a good
shopper.
audience for both of us, right? And so I think private label is really interesting for us, especially where we can be co-branded, because we would like to partner and get some name recognition,
like a powered by kind of thing. Or?
Yeah, we'd love to be on the front of the bag, but we'll take the back for the right price.
So you really care about that brand being out there.
Well, listen, I think we're shifting a bit more to focus on a B2B strategy as our primary focus because of how expensive it is to build a consumer brand.
Yeah.
So the more we can leave it open for gaining awareness while we do this B2B focus, which keeps us on the bag, so to speak, for namesake, I think we would appreciate that. And then long term, maybe Atomo is the only place you get pure Atomo, and maybe you get blends from everybody else. So
right.
There's different strategies we can play.
So 5 years in, are you where you thought you would be 5 years ago right now? And where do you see yourself in 5 years from now?
Yeah, I would tell you we made a bet. A pretty big one over the last year, right? And that bet was building out our manufacturing scaled up capability ahead of maybe where we would have wanted to be on market acceptance, market validation. So we've now built scale, but we have the ability to launch bigger, badder, kick-asser brands, and saying that because Lori,
I know,
Kicking Horse just walked by.
Yeah.
That was for her.
In terms of your attitude, when I was listening to you on the panel, I thought that your tone was really appropriate. I mean, you were talking to an audience representing a sector that is longing for change. I mean, we don't have a choice. You saw the numbers this morning.
Yeah.
The younger generations we're going to have to pay attention.
Oh, yeah.
So do you see a future, when you look at the younger generations, how do you see Atomo fit in there?
Well, I will tell you that, I have a college-age son who I like to send product with off to school. And, small sample, but any of our investors, others, we are so popular with the younger generation as they get a chance to learn about us
intrigued.
And taste it. Like we're in a pilot with a major university that has the largest coffee club in the United States.
Can we ask who that is?
I don't know that I can announce it just yet.
Okay.
We can ask.
You can always ask. And so we're in pilot phase, and we believe on the threshold of unseating a major coffee company from one of their cafes as a pilot for us. And
that's a good idea because I'm a university professor myself.
Yeah.
And I've been teaching for 25 years. I'm seeing fewer cups of coffee in my classroom.
Yeah. Well, check this out. They did a survey, and 80% of the students side by side versus the existing coffee company said they would prefer to have a Atomo based on taste, that they'd be willing to pay 96% more for a Atomo if it was offered in the cafe compared to the current traditional offering. So
wow.
I think we're seeing some good indicators, right? That's not going to be empirical data. It's not a large enough sample set to get over any potential bias in there, but we're liking the indications, and we believe that universities are an amazing front for us, right? They're being, and not to use it in a negative way, indoctrinated around the challenges of what is happening with the climate. On an everyday basis. They're passionate, and they don't pay for their own coffee. Like that's a dream scenario for us.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things that you got me thinking about. So one, you two are saying different things because you're saying you're seeing less coffee. This reminds me of the discussion for plant-based meat. It's like, who's your audience? The flexitarian. Because if I'm not a vegetarian, I don't want to eat meat anyway. But you were saying you're seeing less coffee.
Coffee cups.
Right. But with this brand, we have coffee flavor, right? But people aren't drinking coffee flavors anymore, or do they stop? I have a hard time believing they stopped drinking coffee because of sustainability issues.
No, I wouldn't say
Right?
stop because of that.
In fact, we did some research with our research partner. We talked to 9,000 Canadians, and of them, very few, 10%, say they would pay any premium on any food product.
Well, that's why we can't use this one example, right? It's a body of students that are coffee drinkers.
Yeah.
They are evaluating options for the coffee served in their cafes. And apparently whatever they're serving there today is so bad that,
Yeah.
I would pay $2 more for that any day.
I mean, that's what's interesting, though, is your objective isn't to be the premium. Because what we see a lot of innovation, when we talk to people in innovation, they're like, yeah, I'm going to be here, but I'm going to be a price premium category because maybe it's sustainable, but a bunch of issues. And we don't see in the population in North America people willingness today to pay a premium. But that's not where you're going, right? You're going at the same price point. In fact, less than, if your projections hold true, coffee.
Yeah. Well, it's a $460+ billion industry, and we don't have to carve out too many percentage points to be a multi-billion-dollar company. So we're not here to be greedy, and we are definitely a planet over profits approach, and trying to do something better for the planet. I would tell you the first products we launched, they were premium. They were positioned as premium. They were priced as premium. But we have several new products. When you start blending with traditional coffee, there's a lot that we can do to go premium, commodity, specialty.
Sure.
We also have the opportunity of continuing our development, which we've done. We have a new product that's coming out next year. We've begun having discussions with partners. And it's on par with commodity or premium commodity green bean cost. And ours is roasted and ready to go. So I think within the next year, we're going to be very well positioned to make some big moves. We just need a couple of partners either to engage or return a phone call.
So you're at this conference. First time coming to the Canadian Coffee Conference?
Yes, it's our first time and loving it. It's a great intimate little setting and all the right people in one room.
Have you had discussions with Canadian grocers or Canadian retailers?
We have, yeah.
I mean, you mentioned like a Whole Foods would be cross border, so
right. We've had some discussions. I'll neither confirm nor deny that my example was actually one of the retailers we've spoken to, but. Yeah, no, we've been speaking with Canadian retailers, and we think this is a good market. We launched Amazon last week in Canada, and we're using that, I think, as kind of an entry point to get some consumer feedback.
So anybody can buy Atomo Coffee right now?
Now in Canada, anywhere in Canada.
On Amazon.
On Amazon.
Interesting.
Free shipping.
And how much... I know you weren't clear in terms of prices, but I'm still, for the podcast, I think I need to ask you what price are we fixed?
I'm just checking right now on Amazon, medium roast, beanless coffee for drip French press. You are $23.63.
$23.63.
Canadian. That's Canadian dollars. Yeah, that's Canadian dollars. But that's fantastic. Well, listen, this has been so interesting. I mean, Sylvain and I like talking about innovation. Sometimes we observe innovation gets too far ahead of the market, and you run out of running room. You run out of runway, basically. But it feels like you're trying to make that balance. You've been around 5 years, so you've obviously got some expertise at it. So where we just said if you're Canadian, if you're in Canada, you can go to Amazon,
correct,
buy your product. But if I want to learn much more about the product, where do I go? And then, if someone is listening and they want to list your product, tell us how to get in touch with you.
Yeah, atomocoffee.com is our website, and actually that works for a few different uses. One is to learn more about the product, our production process, the ingredients we use, our story. If you're traveling, what cafes, like we're available in the UK and Japan and the US. And if you want to reach out, I would love for you to contact me directly at ed@atomocoffee.com.
Are you on LinkedIn? Is that another place?
I'm on LinkedIn, so Ed Hoehn, it's linkedin.com/Ed Hoehn.
We'll put the link in the show notes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then, or you can submit through our wholesale portal on our website if there's interest. We'd love to hear from coffee shops. We'd love to hear from food service, wholesalers. We're ready to go. Let's do this together.
Very exciting. Well, Ed, listen, thanks so much for joining Sylvain and I here at the Coffee Conference live in person up in here in beautiful Markham, Ontario.
Are you spending a few days in Canada before heading back to Seattle?
I'm not. I'm headed to Japan the day after I return from this conference.
Well, you're better off because Taylor Swift's in town for 6 days, so get out.
Trust me, I was buried by Swifties on the plane on the way here.
Me too, right? Oh, my God. Anyway, listen, Ed, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, gentlemen. Great to be here.
Success. Good luck. Good luck with everything, and keep in touch.
Thanks. Yeah, have me back. I'm ready.
Absolutely.
All right, so we seem to be in some kind of vibe session. Let's hear from our finance minister, Chrystia Freeland, about what's going on in kitchens across Canada and why this GST vacation that's just been announced and that the provinces are coming on board with their checks is necessary. Let's hear what she has to say. Are you getting the vibes, man? Like, how are your vibes around your kitchen?
I'm not vibing. Yeah. So
all right. So
starting December 14th, I will be vibing.
All right. So let's talk about this GST thing and the check. I mean, it's not bad retail politics. My only question from a political point is why'd you wait so long?
It's not bad retail politics. What are you talking about? It's awful.
Not bad retail politics. Have you spoken to a grocer? Listen, you talk to the average Canadian, and they're like, fine, I get less taxes. Like, that's not bad retail politics. How much money
are you going to spend less at the grocery store because of this holiday? We've done the calculation.
Canadian is not doing the math. They just know more tax is bad, less tax is good. It's not bad. It's not going to move the number for the Liberals. It's still going to get
the average Canadian will save $4.51 at the grocery store for 2 months. Okay,
we'll be vibing then. We'll be vibing. We'll be vibing.
Absolutely.
Now, of course, as you say, every grocer in the country has now got to break their code lock. The last thing retailers want to touch
for 4,000
anywhere near the last thing retailers want to touch, and they code lock usually in October. I used to code lock in October. In December. And now they got to do, Ontario's now dogpiling on with relief on those items on the PST. So there won't be a PST. They just announced that.
That's right.
So there's just money. There's money falling from heaven here. The Ontario government's giving checks of $250. The federal government's giving checks of $250 to certain people. They're giving discounts on potato chips to make them look like they're not elitist. What do you think? What's going on here? How do you assess all this from an ag perspective? Are you one of those economists talking about the Vibecession? Because you're like an economist, right?
I'm all about vibing, man. But I'd say I'm going to say this. So first of all, for the industry, for grocers, this is a complete disaster. It's a lot of work during the worst period of the year for them. It's very busy. And only to see taxes come back in February. And that's probably the worst part in my view. I've always been, and you know this, I've always believed that taxing food is immoral. So when I heard the news, I thought it was going to be permanent. And I said, thank goodness. That's good news. But it's not permanent, which brings some really significant consequences. One, it's a lot of work for only 2 months. Two, if you remember back in 2006 and 2008, Stephen Harper reduced the GST by 1% twice in 18 months. And a lot of people said, that's going to actually make us save money. It didn't, prices went up the first couple of months before market conditions actually normalize. Typically, retailers will get that gap, will cover that tax gap. And so if this is temporary, my guess, the temptation to increase prices, because we all know the food retailing is about, it's about cents. It's about cents. They'll may actually try to get a couple of cents here and there just to capture that market as much as possible and defend margins. And in February, when taxes are back, it'll be slapped on higher prices. That's my concern in all this. However, in food service, savings are pretty
good
significant.
for restaurants.
It's going to be really good for restaurants because coding is not an issue for restaurants. Everything's taxed. So you just basically have to make one change and that's it. No taxes. But from a government perspective, I do wonder if this is a good idea because you're basically telling people, you know what, for 2 months, your ground beef is going to be the same price at the grocery store, but your hamburger at Wendy's or McDonald's, that's going to be 15% cheaper in some cases. Okay. So you're basically encouraging people from, instead of spending money at the retail store, the grocery store, they're going to be spending money at the restaurant instead. Is that a good thing during the holidays?
This is a big W for the Restaurants Canada. Shout out to them.
It's a big W.
Sure
they're not
big
complaining.
W for them. Yeah.
Oh, so of course. But so it's because we actually calculated that the average Canadian could save up to $30 in 2 months, which now it's starting to get really interesting. Now, we haven't even talked about alcohol yet. So you can see that
real money.
Retail wise, nightmare service, it's a godsend. Yeah. But again, I think it would have been better policy only to make this measure permanent, not because even though taxes have a legacy. Taxes have a legacy. It's like the tide, right? When water goes up, it leaves a mark on docks. That's the mark. And if you actually count the tax, prices will go up eventually. So there's always a legacy to any tax, unfortunately.
Well, and again, not a political podcast, but the tax is going to come back right when what else tax goes up in the spring? That's right. It's another escalator on the carbon tax. So, we'll watch and keep an eye on that. Now, speaking of the carbon tax,
it goes up to $90 a metric ton, I believe.
So, speaking of the carbon tax, you issued, or it was published, another peer-reviewed study that was talking about the impact of the carbon tax. So what do you think? I mean, basically, it counters the non-peer-reviewed studies being funded and published by the federal government's propaganda wing. But what did you make out of it?
Oh, you saw that paper?
Yeah.
Ironically, or sadly, so our second paper came out on Monday. And two economists from the University of Alberta decided to release their working paper to the public. Why it's being reviewed by our journal so prematurely. And frankly, I don't know why. I don't know why it's allowed. If it is allowed, I don't know why it's allowed because it's a Canadian journal, first of all. And within a second, you would know who the authors are. So the blind reviews compromise. Our papers were blind reviewed by people I don't know, I've never met. And that's how it works, right? You send out, I'm an editor. So when I'm an editor, I get a copy of a manuscript. I send it out to 3 or 4 reviewers that I know, they don't know authors and they don't know who the reviewers. That's how, so the editor's the broker between the two. But when you actually send out a working paper out there and it's on social media, you actually increase the chances for reviewers to know who the authors are. They basically released the paper on Monday on the same day as ours, just basically because they wanted to undermine what we were doing. That's basically all they wanted to do. Yeah, but the second paper essentially is about demonstrating beyond reasonable doubt that our agri-food sector is becoming less competitive due to many factors, but one of them is the carbon tax. That's basically it. So we actually bring numbers. It's all there. The analysis is all there. And we have 11 co-authors with zero ties to Environment Canada. That's important to say. because most studies are funded by Environment Canada right now. And so we're pretty proud with what we accomplished.
Well, we'll put a link into that study. It's published now, right? It's available now. You can send me that link.
It's available
right?
now, free access to anyone who wants to read it.
People can read for themselves and make up their own minds. And just know that there's been a process. I wanted to follow up on a couple things from last episode. First of all, did you see the news that Walmart announced that they are agreeing with the property control, eliminating property control?
Yes, I did.
Catch that?
Yes, I did.
So now we've got Walmart and Loblaws. I haven't heard of the other three yet, but that's super interesting, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a step in the right direction, to be honest. I know you don't agree with that, but I think it's a step in the right direction.
I think it's a step in the right direction. I'm just not sure institutionally that the landlords won't find a way around it to sell their property. That's all I'm saying.
Oh,
that's a whole
of course. But because if you want a tenant, if you want a happy tenant, you will do certain things. But I do believe that people are starting to realize that competition being suppressed in many different ways, and that's one of them.
The other thing I wanted to follow on, I mentioned back to Texas. I mentioned some Michelin star activity with barbecue places. I misspoke. I said a bunch of names that included Interstellar, which did indeed win a Michelin star, but 4 places: Corkscrew Barbecue in Spring, Interstellar, La Barbecue, Leroy, and Lewis. 4-star winners for the Michelin Guide. And then there's a bunch of Bib Gourmets, including Goldie's, which is actually my favorite, and a bunch of others. So anyway, I wanted to. I'll put a link in the show notes. It's a good note out by Daniel Vaughn, who from Texas Monthly Magazine, who talks extensively about these things. All right, well, listen, I can't imagine a more fun-filled episode than this one. I mean, listen, we're talking taxes, we're talking climate.
Did you see my tweet about censorship today?
No, I didn't. I was vibing today, I guess.
So I was supposed to be in Alberta this week.
Oh, what happened?
So I was booked in December. Yes. People need to know this. I was booked in December
of 2023
because I spoke at that event last year, and so I was booked in December, and then in June, when I was getting really vocal about the carbon tax, I get a phone call saying, "Well, we're gonna actually we changed the program, and we're gonna invite you probably next year, but not this year." And so I was replaced by Joanne MacArthur.
Great trend report, by the way. We'll put a link
great trend report. And so I thought, okay. And then I really realized, and I had a few chats with other people, with some people in there, and I knew why my name was withdrawn from the program. It's because of my position on the carbon tax. Because if you look at the program, and it's the Agri-Food Expo in Lethbridge, it's happening this week, you'll see that there are key sponsors funded by Ottawa that weren't necessarily comfortable with me talking about the carbon tax last year in Alberta, because I was there last year. I spoke. So that's my guess. And frankly, people need to know this. There's a lot of censorship going on in Canada. And I would say that conservatives were doing the same thing. Okay. It's not about the Liberals, conservatives. But the problem we have now over the last 9 years is that there's so much cash that has been given to universities, to non-for-profits. There's so much money out there, new agencies that have been created. They don't have much of a choice but to, they don't have much of a choice but to control the narrative. So whenever actually they organize a conference, they need to make sure they control the narrative, they control the message whenever they put someone on stage. And they can't do that with an academic. If you look at ag events over the last year or two, very rarely you'll see an academic. I'm probably the only one left because you can't control an academic.
Well,
and that's important for people to know.
If the man isn't being invited to the mountain, let's get the mountain on the podcast. Let's get the Alberta Premier here to talk about her views on the carbon tax. How about that? I think she's been fairly vocal about that. So,
well, today, she was actually because I tweeted it and it went viral, and she was actually, a lot of people were asking, "Hey, this is happening in your province. What are you going to do about it?" So Premier Smith actually knows about what went on in Lethbridge this week for sure. Well, Premier, and we'd love to have you on the podcast and talk about that. Absolutely. And many other amazing agricultural issues in the
the great, great province.
Great
of
conservative,
Alberta.
and she doesn't apologize. That's great.
Got to get her on the pod. All right. Get her on the pod. Next year, buckle up, Buttercup. It's going to be an amazing year next year, you listeners. We're going to wrap the year strong. We got some great interviews coming, but next year,
Oh, yeah.
buckle up. There you go. That's our episode on Michael LeBlanc, consumer growth advocate, keynote speaker, media entrepreneur, and provocateur to this episode. And you are?
I'm the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Safe travels, everybody.
Take care.